Hello everybody, welcome back to Gooner Fanzine TV. I'm here with Layth to talk about one of the more controversial moments from yesterday's defeat against Aston Villa. Early in the first half, there was a banner flown over on a plane that basically said, Back Arteta Kroenke Out. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that banner. I know Arsenal fans have got really strong opinions of Stan Kroenke and the ownership. So Layth, I understand you want to have a bit of a rant about the Kroenkes, don't you?
Well, it's nothing that no one's heard before, basically. It hasn't heard before, basically. I was obviously at the game last night reporting on Aston Villa Arsenal for Varvel, and I was in the press box, or behind the press box, basically, obviously due to social distancing. So I was quite, towards the back of the stand, along with a few other journalists. And literally after a few minutes, we could hear this buzzing going round, and you think, oh God, there's another plane. What's going on? Let's hope it's not along the lines of the Burnley plane, which was completely out of order and rightly castigated, including from Burnley captain Ben Mee, which was absolutely superb. It wasn't like that, obviously, we all know. But I couldn't actually see what the plane was saying. It was buzzing around for God knows how many, 5-10 minutes, whatever it was. It was really loud, and it felt like it was really near the ground, like as in the stadium, but I couldn't see it. So, ironically, I'm checking Twitter. I've obviously got the laptop as well, trying to watch the game, trying to write a match report and all the rest of it. And I'm checking, and obviously the news then came through. It was Back Arteta Kroenke, as you said. We obviously got that verified from a few other people who I trust and who saw it. So, I went with it as well, as did everyone else who was there, and as did everyone else who was at home, basically. And for me, the message is spot on because despite Arsenal's defeat yesterday, and it was a disappointing defeat and they didn't play particularly well, but it was against a Villa team fighting for their lives. There was 6 changes as well from the heroic victory on Sunday or Saturday against Man City, following on from the 2-1 against Liverpool. So, it was a poor defeat and it was a poor performance, but let's not really go to town on Arteta. Not that we would anyway, basically. Arteta is building things in the right direction. But as he said, as we all know, after the Liverpool game, he said he had concerns about the budget that he will have this summer to spend and to bolster his club and his squad, basically. If that's the case, then the ball is firmly in the Kroenke's court. If they want Arsenal Football Club to compete again at the top level, they have to open the purse strings. They have to give Arteta not so much what he's asking for, because all managers ask for more than they can get, but certainly enough to strengthen that team, to bolster that team, to rebuild that team and reboot that team. And that includes a centre-half, the defensive midfielder, potentially a creative midfielder as well if you let Ozil go or realise that you're going to cast him adrift, and maybe even a forward. Obviously, you can do a bit of ducking and diving and wheeling and dealing. And you look at that squad and you wonder how many players will actually be there at the start of next season, the first day of next season. I don't think it'll be as many as we think, basically. I think Arteta will try and shape that squad in his own image, and rightly so, basically. So the ball is firmly in the Kroenke's court. As we always say, and what's Stan Kroenke worth? What's Silent Stan worth? $7-8 billion? His wife owns Walmart. Yeah, absolutely. And his wife is part of the Walmart chain as well, the Walmart family. And she's almost double that. So you're talking at least 10, 15, 20 billion dollars, I should say. And if you're not putting a penny into a club you own, what is the point? What is the point? Because it's not like when Arsenal were in the Champions League, when he's sitting on this constant flow of money, this constant revenue stream that's coming in because he's getting to a certain point and the money's coming in and he's making money out of it. If you're not in the Champions League, you're on a downward spiral, and a club of Arsenal cannot afford to be on a downward spiral. Yeah. And Stan Kroenke will start losing money because that's all he cares about, money. And if he starts losing money, he's got to decide what he wants to do. Does he want to sell the club, or does he want to speculate to accumulate? Because he's got the right man in charge at the helm to do that, because Arteta can mould a team given some money. We've seen how good the performance was against Liverpool, albeit against the champions who were, on their holidays already. But you still have to beat them, and we did force 2 errors. He showed that pressing from the top really does pay dividends. And again, a fantastic result against a surprisingly disjointed City side on Saturday. So the potential's there, the manager's there, there's highly talented youngsters there, there's a really good squad. Arteta's building something for the future. He needs money. And for me, that plane and that banner was spot on. It's down to the Kroenkes now. Invest or sell up. Get out of our club or put some money in, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the Kroenke's worth there. I'm just reading something on the Forbes website from 4 years ago, that Stan Kroenke bought a ranch worth $725 million, which at the time was the most expensive ranch ever. I mean, imagine what even 1/7 of the cost that Ranch should do to this Arsenal team now. If you gave Arteta 100 million, I think it'd go a long way towards the rebuild. It's also interesting you mentioned there was quotes from Arteta about a week ago. I think it was in the wake of the Liverpool win, wasn't it, where he said, he needs that backing. Do you think he's going to get it or not? Because obviously, at the moment it's really difficult for football clubs financially with the whole coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are being realistic when we do say that, that he does need money, because all clubs are suffering, Arsenal more than most, because their business plan is predicated around increasing matchday revenue flows, basically. And obviously there's been no matches to gather income from. So they're being harder hit, just as Man United are, and just as big clubs who earn a lot of their funds through matchday sources. So, we are realistic. We're not saying give us £500 million, or when Abramovich went to Chelsea, he splurged X amount on basically buying a whole side. 2, 3, or 4 top quality players. That's all we're looking for. International class, world class players potentially, but players that can grow into the role if they've got the talent. Liverpool spent 75 million on Van Dijk a few years back, and he absolutely changed that side. Arsenal spent 35 million on Skodran Mustafi, and as much as he improved this season, what that was that good value? I don't know. For the sake of an extra 30-40 million pounds on a marquee top quality signing who will add quality and value to the club, the Kroenkes have to open their wallets, basically. Whether they do is a completely different matter. And I think Arteta has done all he can to put pressure on them to make sure that fans realise that it's not him, it's the club that needs to put money in, basically. And it's not his fault that the players aren't performing as well as they can. Imagine someone like a Thomas Partey in defensive midfield. Lucas Torreira was so off the pace last night. Granit Xhaka's great, but he's just left-footed. He's not creative. We always say this. He's not athletic enough to be a box-to-box fielder. He's not powerful enough to be a defensive midfielder. He's not disciplined enough positionally either. So what's his point? We need a strong defensive midfielder who can really patrol the back line and start breaking up opposition attacks so we can attack, basically. We also need a really, really good top-quality centre-half. And potentially, if Aubameyang goes, we need to replace that with a goal scorer who's going to get goals for us. I love Eddie Nketiah. I don't know if Lacazette is even going to play next season, but is Eddie that, you can't put it all on Eddie, basically, for next season. So if Aubameyang does go, because Arsenal are not going to offer the money that he thinks he's worth, then it's a double whammy, basically. So the Kroenkes have a big decision to make this summer. But if I was Arteta, I'd be like, look, you need me to do this job, because not many people can do a better job than I can. If you deny me the funds, we're going to have to talk seriously about my future, basically. So it's a massive, massive summer for Arsenal and Arteta.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about with this issue. You've got to worry as well that you look at all the years the Kroenkes have been at Arsenal and have owned Arsenal, that they've never really put money in anyway. This is not kind of a one-off flash in the pan moment where they've decided to kind of pull back on the amount of money they've put in. It's been like this since they took over. Yeah,
absolutely. KSC, Kroenke Sports Enterprises, actually took 3 million out in dividends. The first time an owner of Arsenal Football Club has taken a penny out in dividends in the history of the club, basically. You had the Hillwoods going back to Samuel Hillwood and his forebear prior to that, after Henry Norris, basically, in the 20s. And that club, the owners were custodians of that club. They weren't there to make money out of it. Obviously, you could argue the toss about Peter Hillwood selling up later on before his sad passing, but at the same time, they cared about the club. Kroenke, does he care about the club? I don't know. Josh certainly pays an interest in it, but he has to. His dad owns it. He's told him to come over. So, it's a real. There's a fork in the road now, basically. If Arsenal don't invest this summer, and that squad spirals down even more, Arsenal are going to finish 8th maximum this season. That's the lowest since 1995. I remember watching them in 1995. We had the Cup Winners' Cup run to fall back on that season, even though the football wasn't brilliant in the league. We haven't got anything. I suppose you could argue we've got the FA Cup, but it's a very, very strange season. And the fact that the Kroenkes need to put money in. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And obviously this is going to massively affect the recruitment side. And I think we saw last night that, the recruitment hasn't been good enough for a number of reasons, the lack of funds or the way that Arsenal are currently recruiting players. You look at people like Kolasinac and Cedric, both free transfers, who don't know if they're going to cut the mustard anymore. I mean, Cedric's been here, 6, 7, 8 months now? And it's really concerning that we're going to be, aiming for players who are playing at their level, who aren't at the required Arsenal level, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for all Cedric offers in terms of solidity and defensive presence, and obviously just bolstering the squad in terms of numbers, he's not, I don't think, a player that can, certainly not a starting 11 player that can lead you to great glories. If you look at Villa's goal last night, obviously I said I was there. I highlighted the fact that, you know, Aubameyang was laughing with his, and obviously Tyrone Mings beat him to the ball, flicked the ball on, and Trezeguet scored. But if you look at Trezeguet, no one was near him. Cedric Suarez had to be near Trezeguet to block him, and he was nowhere near it. So, you know, Aubameyang's obviously getting a bit of stick for it. It's not personal. We're just highlighting an error that an Arsenal player made that led to a goal. So that was an error. But also Cedric was an error as well, because he didn't get tight enough on Trezeguet. So if that's the calibre of the player against the team that's battling relegation, how can you trust him against, you know, Liverpool or Man City or something like that? So we need better players than that. I'm not saying Cedric isn't good enough to play for Arsenal. He is, because he's obviously playing for them. But at the same time, are you going to progress with Cedric in your starting lineup? I don't know. Maybe next season he'll have an absolute stormer. You know, Pablo Mari's to come back as well, a few other players. But at the same time, it's not so much, I would say marquee sign. It's not so much a marquee sign. I don't want a big name for the sake of it. I want a player who can improve that squad, basically. Mikel Arteta's obviously, he must have identified players alongside Raul Sanelli and Edu, and they must have a budget and they must have a transfer list that they're going to activate or try and work out after the FA Cup final. But in terms of the budget, you have to have a large enough budget to be able to buy those type of players. Otherwise, we are just getting the Cedrics of this world, and we're just going to keep on spiralling downwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned there about, you know, Arteta and the Arsenal transfer hierarchy having some kind of shortlist. There was an interesting piece in The Athletic where they discussed how Arsenal were doing transfers in the current climate, and that they're signing players that they're being offered through contacts, and then Arteta gives his approval. Does that worry you in a way, that Arteta's maybe not having the first say and it's stuff that's coming to Arsenal rather than Arsenal going to players, if that makes sense?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I've always been wary of the director of football model. I don't think it works in English football. You show me one club that's done really well with a prominent director of football who chooses the players and the manager has to work with them. This isn't Spain. It's an accepted practice in Spain, just like it is in Germany and Italy and France, in every big league in Europe, basically. But it's not an English way of doing things. The manager, the mister, as the Spanish call it, is a person who has complete control. Obviously, you know, football clubs are complete different entities than what they were even 10, 15, 20 years ago. So you are going to need further layers of management and other people giving you advice. But for someone to go to a manager, you're having this player because I like him, or because I've got a good deal on him, or because an agent's whispered in my ear, I feel so uneasy about that, regardless of how good or bad Raul Sanelli is. So I don't think it's a model that that would work in this country long term, and it certainly hasn't. I haven't been impressed by it at Arsenal. And the thing is, Arsenal did have a man who could have made that model work as best as anyone, and that's Sven Mislintat, and they let him go because I don't know. He obviously resigned because he was denied the role he wanted because Raul got it, basically. But you know, Mislintat has identified so many players time and time again. He's a proven talent scout. He's a proven talent spotter, but he could also act as director of football as well. And Arsenal lost him, and that's careless, basically. And if we're talking about Raul bringing in players that Arteta doesn't want, then my word, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of the transfer rumours we've heard so far. Obviously, you know, we've got to take rumours with a pinch of salt. We're going to discuss a few that are in a piece on the online Gooner. We're going to be doing daily transfer roundups to look at some players that Arsenal linked with and some who are possibly going out. So let's discuss Aubameyang. Obviously, you mentioned his mistake last night for the Aston Villa goal, but according to the Telegraph, he's going to be offered a big money deal, and that's will be offered to the player in the next few days. So, are you confident Aubameyang's going to stay, or do you think he'll go?
I wrote a column for the Gooner literally a couple of weeks ago, basically saying, you know, stay and become an Arsenal legend. Let Arteta build the next squad around you. Bring Arsenal into a new era. Stay for 3 or 4 years, and then, you know, potentially they could build a statue on you if you achieve half of what we're hoping you can do. Otherwise, go to Barcelona for 1 year at the age of 32, 33, even if you sign a 2 or 3 year contract, whatever. You'll have 1 year in the first team. You'll be discarded after that because you'll be seen as too old. And that'll be it. You'll be a footnote in Barcelona's history. You'll be a footnote in Arsenal's history. So Aubameyang's got to realise he's on good money and he's going to be on better money, whatever Arsenal agree, basically. And I know they're talking, and I know Arteta said all the right things over the last few weeks. But how much money do you need? I know it's about, you want to make as much as you can, and it's a short career, and you want to maximise your income, and you want to be seen to be earning more than your peers potentially. And that's the same in any industry, really. You want to earn more than anyone else, although it shouldn't be a driving force. But he's got to realise that Arsenal do have a finite budget, regardless of how much the Kroenke is given, because Arteta can still, potentially offload Ainsley Maitland-Niles for 20-odd million as other players as well. So you can get a transfer budget that way, which you can then plough into Aubameyang's wages or signing on for a new contract. But Arsenal can't break the bank for him. He's 31. If he was 25, then you could go, right, okay. But equally, it's such bad business by Arsenal, again, to let it run down into the last year. There's got to be a decision made one or the other. There's no way he can start the next season with signing on, saying I might sign, I might not sign, because we've had that so many times. Sometimes it's been player-led, sometimes it's been club-led. But either way, it's so destabilising and so destructive for the squad to have your talisman, to have your leader, to have your captain unsure of whether he's going to stay beyond that season, basically, and having his head turned all year with speculation. It's not good for the players, it's not good for the club, and it's not good for the squad. So Arsenal have to say, the morning after the cup final, or a week later, or mid-August, or whatever, they've got to put a line in the sand and go, you either sign the really good contract that we're giving you, which is going to be a better offer than what you're on now. Let's make no mistake, he's going to get more than he's on now, and he's on a hefty whack now, or you leave. You go, and we'll sell you for whatever we can get, because we're not going to have you, run down your contract, basically. So there's big decisions to be made. I love Aubameyang. I want it to stay. Again, even with the error last night, it was an error and he shouldn't have done it. I want to see players having a laugh and a joke. He obviously did it at the wrong time, but that doesn't mean he deserves to be blasted personally for it. He's a really, really good player in terms of his striking abilities, but he's good off the pitch. He does like a flash car, and the times I've sort of driven to London Colney for a morning presser and seen this big Lamborghini sort of overtake me, obviously well within the speed limit, I hope to add, but at the same time, he's trying to get to training on time, and he's made it, because I don't find him, but he does leave it. He does cut it fine sometimes, and he likes a motor. I mean, that's not a crime in itself, because he does perform on the pitch, and he's got 62 goals in 80, 90 games. I don't know what it is. You know the stats better than I do. I was putting him on match reports, but I can never remember. But he scored an awful lot of goals, and he got to 50 Premier League goals quicker than Thierry Henry did for Arsenal. So that's amazing. So I want him to stay. He has to be realistic. The club have to offer him more, and all the advisors and all the club and the player, they have to meet in the middle for the benefit of the player, Arsenal Football Club, and hopefully he will stay, because he needs to stay. Arsenal need him to stay, but equally as well, he won't get a better deal in terms of a club being focused on him. He will have the whole spotlight of the club on him. If he goes to Barcelona, the ball boys won't even know who he is half the time. So, it's down to him to make a decision, but hopefully they can reach a sensible financial decision, which is the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's reportedly going to be a £250,000 a week contract. So, it'll make him Arsenal's highest earner, possibly the highest earner, depending on Mesut Ozil's situation. I don't think we've got enough time to discuss him tonight. But just in terms of a few rumoured incomings, Chelsea winger Willian, that rumour keeps popping up, every couple of days, it seems. I mean, it's not really something that appeals to me, and it's not something that, I really think would appeal to Arteta in terms of building a long-term project. I don't particularly think he's going to do anything. It strikes me as like kind of Mkhitaryan did, a player who's done well in the past, but is now, going downhill in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with a journalist hat on, you could go through Williams' attributes and abilities and his achievements at Chelsea, and he's a half decent player. But from an Arsenal point of view, from an Arsenal supporter's point of view, I'm fed up with Chelsea rejects. I don't want any more Chelsea rejects. I want players at the prime of their career who haven't gone somewhere else and just been decided that they're just better than average. I want decent, hungry, young players to come to Arsenal. I don't want Chelsea's cast-offs. If he's not good enough for Chelsea, why is he good enough for Arsenal? That's the bottom line. And no, I don't want him. And he's been touted around by a certain person, and it's just, agents do what they have to do, basically, and that's fair enough. But at the same time, I don't want him at Arsenal. If he comes to Arsenal, what does that say? It's a Europa League signing, basically. And I know we're not even in the Europa League, but surely we've got to aim higher than that.
Yeah. And one last player I want to discuss. Obviously, you were at Villa Park last night, and I saw you tweet that you were studying Jack Grealish quite closely. And considering Arsenal's lack of creativity, not just last night, but this season as a whole, I think they're 16th out of 20 teams in the Premier League for chances created. So, it's not been good enough creatively. Do you think someone like Grealish would be the perfect player that Arsenal need? I think he's created the second most chances of individual players in the Premier League. So clearly he would bring that extra creative spark, wouldn't he?
Tell you what, I'm glad people read my Twitter. I'm glad you read my Twitter. Yeah, I literally spent 5 minutes watching him. It was almost like Jack Grealish came towards the end of the first half of Villa last night, just literally because there wasn't much going on after the goal, basically. And I love him. I love left-footed players. I looked at his balance. Players who have good balance and a good technique are so attractive to look at, are so great, especially if you're left-footed as well. I always compare it to Yaya Sanogo, basically. Do you remember him? Like, he looked like
yes.
Yeah, and don't say about the 4 goals he scored against Benfica. The rest of his career rowing about Arsenal, but he had no balance whatsoever. He looked really awkward on the ball, and I know you can make a career of it, and you could do really well. Look at Peter Crouch and players like that. But a truly elegant, fully balanced player is a real joy to behold. And if you're left-footed as well, it makes you so much more creative. The way you can cut in at different angles compared to the majority of right-footers as well. He's a big personality. He hasn't always got things right, but he's a young lad and he's learning all the time. I would love him at Arsenal, absolutely love him. But he's a Villa lad. He's a Birmingham lad. He's a Villa boy. It would take a lot of money to prize him away from Villa, regardless of whether they stay up or not. I think they will stay up now. Purely on the basis of beating us last night and they've got West Ham. Whereas, we've got Watford home and you like to think we can beat Watford and Troy Deeney. But that's another story for another day. But at the same time, if Villa put a fee of 50, 60, 70, 80 million, whatever it is, because he is homegrown, he is English, you've got the English surcharge as well, the English tax almost on high quality lads from England or Britain, Arsenal can't afford him. And you talk about the wages on top. It's not going to happen. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. But, I just can't see it. And no, no's the answer, basically. Yeah. But I would have him like a shot at Arsenal. I really would.
Yeah. Well, in that case, what do you think is going to happen this summer? Obviously, it's very difficult to predict and we don't have any kind of inside information with transfers or Arsenal's business. But what do you think will happen in terms of transfers at Arsenal this summer? Do you think we'll get that big marquee signing or do you think we'll really struggle to bring players in?
Yeah. Obviously, as a journalist at the coalface covering Arsenal, I had to deal with agents. I'm not a fan of agents. I'm not a big fan of them, full stop, for so many reasons. Don't get me started because I could have a proper rant. So I don't really deal with agents. I know it's part and parcel of football journalism or a lot of certain sites who thrive on transfers. I don't have anything to do with agents. I'm not a big fan. So I'm not particularly interested in what goes on before a player's signed. I know a lot of people read it and that's great and we'll be covering it as well. I know you've got your ear to the ground and stuff, which is great. But I, as a rule, don't want to talk to agents because football's a beautiful game, but a dirty business. So I couldn't tell you anything about players coming this summer. I could look into it and probably find out a bit, but I'm really, do you know what? Life's too short. I'm not interested. Until Arsenal sign that player, I'm not going to speculate at all. So I'll leave that to you, Dan. Let me turn the question around. Who do you think Arsenal should sign and who do you want to sign?
Well, I think, as we've suggested, a creative midfielder is desperately needed. We've not created enough chances, and obviously our highest earner just simply doesn't do his job, does he, in Mesut Ozil? So, yeah, I think a creative midfielder is needed. After Lucas Torreira's poor season and the uncertainty surrounding Danny Ceballos, I think a deep line midfield player is also needed. And then defensively, I mean, 2, maybe 3 centre-backs needed as well. So there's a lot to be done. But as we've said, the money situation, Arsenal lost £27 million in the financial last year. And, we're obviously now going to be missing out possibly on Europa League, which will hit the finances even harder. Don't get this wrong. Arsenal are in such a bad financial situation right now. There's hardly any money to work with, as we've discussed. So, it's going to be a massive summer. And I think it will be a case of A, what happens with Aubameyang, B, what happens with Ozil, and C, who goes out and who doesn't. There's been talk of Guendouzi leaving, obviously, because of his disciplinary issues, Maitland-Niles as well. People like Socrates aren't playing at the moment. So there's lots of players that could go out, but it's a case of, are there any suitors? every football club is in a difficult financial situation right now, and will they want to invest and buy players, especially at high prices? Because Arsenal will need to sell players for high prices to fund any sort of rebuild. So it's going to be a crazy summer, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. It's really difficult to predict.
Yeah, absolutely, and well said as well. But I do want to put you on a spot as a journalist, obviously as a fellow journalist yourself. Give me some names. Who would be an ideal defensive midfielder? I know we've talked about Thomas Partey. Do you have any more? And give me a centre half as well.
Well, I think Thomas Partey would be the ideal one. You know, he's not just a defensive midfielder, but he's box to box as well. You know, he's good when he goes forward. If you know, I hate to be the cliche of looking at players on YouTube, but if you do look at Thomas Partey on YouTube, there's a lot of good stuff going forward. A really good striker of the ball from distance, and as we say, defensively can really break play up. So I think he'd be the ideal player because he offers you going forward and back. I also mentioned this in the reaction video yesterday. I'd quite like to see Ceballos stay now because he's growing on me. He's warming on me a little bit. I don't know about you, but I'd quite like him to stay. In terms of centre-backs, I'd go with just someone really solid. I've mentioned Lewis Dunk in the past, you know, at Brighton, someone who's just, you know, really solid centre-half, doesn't make many mistakes, is a captain, is a leader, someone who's no nonsense. You know, I don't want, you know, players coming from Europe who are a bit flashy, can play Hollywood pass, you know, but can't defend that well. Not particularly interested in that. So someone like Lewis Dunk, I think, would be brilliant for Arsenal. Yeah,
I completely agree. I love Dunk. I love centre forwards, centre halves who can put the foot through the ball to clear the lines, basically. As Rob Holding did last night, funny enough. But that's a different story. Got to ask one more question, actually. You see, I'm flipping it round now. Mesut Ozil, discuss.
We discussed it on the reaction video last night, which you can go on the YouTube channel and watch. And we said that, you know, especially Arsenal fans, because of the lack of chances created last night, that we should go back into the fold. It's just not the answer, is it? How many times under Wenger, Emre, and now Arteta has he been dropped from the team, or been played out of position, put out on the left, or put on the bench, or whatever, you know, who's not been involved, and gone through a boring form, and we've bring him back, and for 2 or 3 games, you know, we show him why he should be in the team, then his form drops off again. It's a repetitive cycle that we need to get out of. By going back to Mesut Ozil, we're going back to someone who is now 32, has not performed at the required level for a number of years, and it's a bad step. We need to just somehow, I don't know how, will have to sort this out, but he just needs to be jettisoned from this squad. He's taking up too much money and he's causing too much negative talk in terms of, you know, will he stay, will he go, should he play, should he not? And it's just, there's so much drama surrounding him, and Arsenal so much better off without him, both financially and, you know, in terms of a better attitude and mentality within the squad. And I think it's just, we've got to find a way to get rid of him now because it's been running on for far too long.
Yeah. Absolutely, I can't add anything more than that. Basically, it is boring. It's got too much now. He's a talented player who hasn't performed. He's had 7 years at Arsenal. He's absolutely pillaging the club for money, 350 grand a week. It's just ridiculous. I know we always go back to that, but what really disappointed me was, I know he does a lot of work for charity. I know he's done really, really good things, and fair play to him for that. He deserves a pat on the back. But for someone who earns, you know, what is it, £1.4 million a month, to not give up any of that money, to not defer any of that money, while the rest of his squad did that at the height of the coronavirus pandemic, to give to local charities in North London, or even further than that, you know, to not give a penny. You know, it's great that you're doing your own stuff, and I'm really pleased for you. But at the same time, you've got to show solidarity. You've got to show a bit of leadership sometimes. You've got to show a bit of character and step up. And certainly if your teammates are as well, then you've got to do that. And what does that say about the bloke? I know, you know, he's thinking, well, I've got to make sure the money goes to the right place, and why should I give money if billionaire owners aren't? But if his teammates are, surely you could do it. And we worked out 12.5%. You know, obviously deferred to 7.5% if they do get the Champions League. That's not going to happen. But 12.5% off your weekly wages of 350 grand is still 308 grand a week, I should say, 308 grand a week. So you're hardly losing. You know, it's not that you can't pay your mortgage or something. It's just it's absolutely ridiculous. So. And also, what does that say about your attitude when you're on the field as well? If you're not going to join your teammates off it, okay, fair enough, do what you want. You don't have to go to dinner with them or the pub, or not that anyone goes to the pub anymore. But if you're not joining or showing solidarity, it's a real insight, and it's indicative of potentially how he's viewed on the field as well. Because as we always go back to, we were in Arteta's first press conference. He said he was going to be ruthless, but he said he was going to give players a chance as well. Well, he's given Ozil, a former teammate who he knows inside out, he's given him 7 months, 8 months, and Ozil has just not grasped that olive branch, and he's certainly not decided to step up and become the player or show the player that we thought he was capable of, but he's not anymore, basically. So the best thing he can do is either Arsenal buy out his contract and just bid him farewell, or he goes to someone like Turkey. We pay half his wages. There's some big commercial tie-up or sponsorship with a Turkish or multinational company, and he plays in Turkey for a year till he runs his contract down, and then we wave him into the sunset, basically. But it's a real shame because no one wanted this. You know, he could have been an absolute Arsenal legend. He's left a few flittering fond memories, but at the same time he's left a bad taste in the mouth for what he's done and what he hasn't done, basically. So yeah, just completely agree, Dan.
Yeah, well, that was quite an extensive transfer talk. Obviously, could have been an important summer for Arsenal, but that's all from us here. If you want to go and look at the reaction videos from the Aston Villa defeat, and over to the YouTube channel, and if you want more transfer talk, you can go to the online.com. We've also got plenty of brilliant writers who are giving opinions, their analysis of Arsenal at the moment. Obviously, it's a crazy time for the club, so yeah, no better place to read than online Gooner. As I say, thank you very much, Layth, for joining me, and thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.